All right. I think it's high time we got started, everyone. So welcome to everyone that just joined. We're going to be doing a demo of the Aether platform today and just going over some of the feature changes, some of the new features that are now part of the platform. And then at the end, as like I said previously, if you have any questions, I'll be going through them. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat. And then at the end of the call, I'll answer as many of the questions as I can. If any that I can't answer on the call, I will collect them, and then those will be answered by email after the end of the webinar. This today won't be too long, probably be about 20 to 30 minutes, and then any extra time for the questions. So today with the Aether platform, what we're going to be looking at first is the Adaptive Defense 360 on Aether. So not much is going to change if there are any people that are EP or Endpoint Protection Plus. It's just going to see some few additional changes that are specific to Adaptive Defense 360, but wanted to show the highest overall level and then go through some of the changes with the Aether platform. So one of the big changes that everyone will notice at first is definitely the look and feel of the platform itself. We have massively upgraded what it looks like, and it's not just from a beautification perspective, it's also from a utilization perspective. So we've separated things out into their own separate dashboards, making it much easier from a management perspective and allowing you to get granular detail around the data that you care about. So as you can see currently, we've split the dashboards into a security dashboard, a web access and spam dashboard, a patch management dashboard, licensing, executive report, and then a new piece of functionality on the reporting side of things, My List, which allows you to get granular, deep detail out of any part of the platform and being able to put that into a spreadsheet format. If you want to see intrusion attempts that are blocked or specific detections, or you want to see exactly what machines are unprotected, you'll be able to create those reports based around that, whereas with the executive report, it's more high level. So with the security dashboard, not much has changed, just the look and feel. Still going to be able to drill down, gain access to any part of the platform, any sort of detail that you care about. So if you want to go see exactly what computers are properly protected, which ones have errors, as you can see, I can drill down into it and get that detail. And you'll notice throughout a lot of the platform, these three little dots, this will allow you to access options for pretty much any part that you want to adjust, making it much easier from a management perspective. The way that I like describing it, for any admins that are going to be in here managing it day to day, I want you to be able to come in over a cup of coffee, get in and get out. Unless you're a security professional that has all day to be spending in a security solution like this, this should be as easy and as simple so you can go about your daily workflow and make sure your day-to-day is not impacted by having to be inside of the security solution all day long. So back to the security dashboard, just to drill through a little bit, a few more parts. So specifically to Adaptive Defense 360, pretty much the only change that occurs within the security dashboard is we've now split out malware activity and exploit activity. For Endpoint Protection and Endpoint Protection Plus, all you're going to see are the threat detections, and then potentially if you have any Exchange servers that you're monitoring with Endpoint Protection Plus, you can then see the content filtering for the Exchange servers right from there. On the legacy console, it used to be one giant dashboard. So you have the web content filtering if you had Endpoint Protection Plus or Adaptive Defense 360 down at the bottom. That web content filtering now has its own dashboard. So with the web access and spam, that covers both web content filtering and then spam filtering for Exchange servers if there are on-site Exchange servers. No longer is it just a pie chart. You're now getting access to the top 10 most access categories in general by computer, and then also the top 10 most blocked. And as you can see, I can drill down into any part of this. So if I wanted to go see exactly who is accessing game websites the most during the day, and just to see exactly what they're doing and how many times they're trying to access it during a workday, I can see that right through here. And you'll notice this little blue button right here to the top right, export. You can now export pretty much any part of the platform from a data perspective that you care about. So if you want to go export all the category accesses for games on all of these machines within your endpoint, you can go ahead and do that. You also are able to see the spam detected on the Exchange servers as well. So again, if there are any Exchange servers that are on site and you're utilizing the extra protection that's within Endpoint Protection Plus or Adaptive Defense 360, you'll be able to see that within here as well. This takes us to our patch management dashboard, which is a new piece of functionality within the Aether platform, and it is a separate module. So patch management, within our systems management platform, we had patch management that was Windows only. And as we coalesced the two products into one, so we have one single console, one single agent. The first module that we brought over was patch management. Now on the Aether platform, it's much easier to manage, and you have full Windows and third-party support. So as you can see within here, I'm able to see exactly what computers have patch management, when the checks for any new patches has occurred. Also, we even allow you to see end-of-life programs. So you can see programs that are currently in EOL, ones that are reaching EOL, or ones with known EOL dates. So if I drill down into this, as you can see, I can see exactly what programs, the versioning, when they reach end of life, and I can export this. So this makes it very simple to come in, get the detail around what applications that you have currently today within your environment that are extremely vulnerable to exploits that are never going to be patched since they reached end of life. And as we know, making sure that you are removing vulnerabilities within your environment massively decreases your surface attack area, because 60% of all attacks are through the utilization of exploits, because it does not require an intelligent attacker to utilize exploits to gain access to your environment to potentially cause a denial of service or to potentially steal company data. So back to the dashboard itself. Now we get down to what patches are actually available. So we can see security patches, non-security related patches, and service packs, and depending upon what their criticality is. We can also view what the last patch installation tasks are, and this is actually part of a new tab within our dashboard, tasks, where you can go view the results of scans, the results of patches, and with this patch management, it allows you to deploy out from the most very basic, a single patch to a single machine, to multiple patches, to multiple machines, depending upon how your group and hierarchy is set up. And to harp on to that point, the hierarchy is now much easier to manage within your environment. With the migration process, the hierarchy is preserved, and then from there, you're able to granularize it as much as you see fit. So as we can see, I see install Internet Explorer 11 patch on 6 computers. I saw another one for the following criticality. I want to set up a patch based around my server group. And what does that look like, and how much simpler is that compared to what was present in systems management? So we go into the computers tab, and as you can see, right off the bat, much prettier and much easier to organize and manage within here. So I want to set up a patch policy for my servers group. I want it to run on the weekends because I don't want it impacting my users with any potential downtime. So I come in here, I can see my server group, I click on the 3 little dots, and I have a variety of options that are present to me. This now makes it much easier to manage settings, to manage the deployment, manage pretty much any part of the hierarchy and the computers within those groups. So I want to schedule a patch installation. So I'm going to go to Schedule Patch Installation. I can see exactly who the recipients are because I selected servers, and then I can choose my options. So I can choose to run it as soon as possible. I can choose to run it at a specific time. I can repeat it whenever I feel like, and I can also choose which types of patches get deployed out. So for this, because it's my server group, I want it to run on the weekends, on Saturday, and let's say we're going to run it at noon. So we'll choose Saturday the 3rd at noon. And I don't want it to run when the computer is turned back on. Say that server was down. I don't want it to run again as soon as it was turned back on, because potentially that could be on a weekday and could cause downtime for my employees. I only want it to run during that patching period. So instead of saying run when the computer is turned on, I'm going to say do not run. Now I know it's only ever going to run on Saturdays at noon, and it's going to repeat every week. And because I want to make sure I'm getting all the patches deployed, I'm going to choose every single security patch on here to deploy out to my machines. So I come in, choose those, and now I can choose my restart options. Because I'm not going to be in the office on Saturday, I don't need to manually restart those machines. I'm going to choose to automatically restart the servers only, just because there's no workstations in that group. Just to be safe, I'm going to make sure I choose automatically restart only the servers within here. Now, maybe I forgot to add a couple servers. We brought some new servers online into that servers group, and I decided to go back to the computers group. I forgot to save it. No worries. Under the Tasks tab, we can now see that that patch policy that I was creating was saved. All the edits, all the changes that I made were saved here. I can see that it has been published. I can go back in, I can edit it, and within this Task tab, I can also see all previous installations, uninstallations, because as we know, there's always the chance for a potential issue with a patch that could cause a variety of issues, from blue screens to just the applications crashing. If that is the issue, patch rollback is the perfect opportunity for that, and that's why you can see uninstalling Internet Explorer 11 patch from 6 computers. So I can come in, view the results of these previous patch deployments. So let's just take a look at this patch rollback for the Internet Explorer 11 patch. I come in, I can view the results. So I can see it's finished on all the machines, but let's just make sure, see if it actually fully finished, if it needs a restart, because potentially with this patch deployment that me or one of my colleagues did, they might not have forced a restart on it just because it's our demo environment and their VMs. So let's see the view uninstalled patches. And as we can see, they do require restarts. And it looks like maybe this machine went off during that install. So potentially, once that comes back online, it'll be able to finish the install, and then we have to reboot these machines. So as we can tell, the forced reboot did not occur for these VMs. So in essence, this patch management makes it vastly, vastly easier to deploy out patches, to manage your environment, and to decrease your surface attack area, because removing the vulnerabilities is paramount to increasing your security profile. Next on the dashboards, we have the licensing, the executive report dashboard, and then the My List. Licensing, very straightforward. Shows you exactly how many licenses you have, how many assigned, any without, and any that you've excluded. Then the executive report. With the UI change, it's just now easier to modify, how you want to set up these executive reports based on schedules. If you want to have a licensing report once a month, a security status once every 2 weeks, detections once a day, and maybe a web access once a month as well, so you can see what's going on a monthly perspective, where everyone is going, what potentially you need to cut back on, say if they're going to streaming websites and they're eating up bandwidth. So you're able to create as many reports as you want, schedule them however you see fit. There are some new changes to the executive reports themselves. So I will create this report. We'll give it a moment to generate. And you'll notice, depending upon if it's adaptive defense or if it's a endpoint protection or endpoint protection plus, both do have some new details that are in the reports. So the look and feel has definitely changed, prettier report. You're still getting the same basic details that you got before, licensing status, network security status, if they have up-to-date protection or up-to-date knowledge. And as I scroll down, if you're Adaptive Defense 360, you see the classification. And now we're seeing some of the new details. So you can see the top 10 computers with most detections. And as I scroll down further, specific to Adaptive Defense 360, I can see the latest malware detection. So I can see what the threats are, what they did, if they accessed data, if they made external connections, if they actually ran, what action occurred on them. I can see the latest PUP and latest exploit detections as well. The normal AV detections. And then as I get down to the web content filtering, I can also see the top 10 most accessed categories overall by computer, and then of course the top 10 most blocked, as we saw in the web content dashboard. So this makes it easier, gives more detail on the executive report while still being high level. So you can show this to a higher up, get that detail that you need to see based around licensing, based around detections, and then if you want and if you need the more granular detail for the lower reports, potentially for the admins or anyone that's working within the solution, that's where the lists come into play. So as I mentioned previously, you can create lists on pretty much whatever data that you care about within the platform. So as an example, let's say we're concerned around intrusion attempts within my environment. We've been getting hit with a lot of ping attacks, we've been getting hit with a lot of TCP and UDP floods, and we want to see that sort of detail in a nice spreadsheet format. So I click on My List and I click on Add, and I can see the variety of options that are available to me. Now this will change depending upon what version of the platform you have, if you have Endpoint Protection Plus, Adaptive Defense, or Adaptive Defense 360. So intrusion attempts, that's going to be on every single one because the firewall portion is part of every single part of our platform. So let's take a look at intrusion attempts being blocked. So as we can see, I can filter this however I see fit. I can choose it based on the date. I can choose it based on the computer type if I want to see specifically workstations, servers, laptops, and the intrusion attempts itself. So if I were getting thousands upon thousands of intrusion attempts and I wanted to filter it down specifically to individual ones, I could do that. Now the information that's present on the management console is pretty basic. Computer, IP address, what group it belongs to, the intrusion type, and when it occurred. The actual detail that's present within the spreadsheet gives you a lot more granular detail. You're going to be able to see remote and local IP addresses, remote and local ports, remote MAC addresses, and we'll create this real quick. We'll open this up. Give me one moment while this generates. Alrighty, so let me share The intrusion attempt being blocked. And as you can see, I'm getting a lot more granular detail present within here. I can see all that detail that I mentioned: local remote IP addresses, remote MAC addresses, local remote ports, the number of actions that were actually taken against that specific machine, if it was, what it was detected by, what the action was. All that detail is now within a spreadsheet format that it really allows you to get a lot more granular detail out of the platform that just was not present on the legacy console. So let me reshare the Chrome browser. Now with the lists, all that information you can export however you see fit to generate these reports. You, of course, with Adaptive Defense and Adaptive Defense 360, you also have access to the Advanced Visualization tool as a separate module if that's something that you care about. All that metadata that we are collecting off of the endpoints is fed up into our big data environment. And to go even deeper and even more granular, that's where the Advanced Visualization tool comes into play. So you now have more granular detail that's on the management platform, and then you can still go even deeper within the Advanced Visualization tool if that's something that makes sense for that environment. So let's go back to the Computers tab and talk a little bit more about the hierarchy. So both the detail that is present and the detail that you're able to gather from these is a lot more in depth than what is present within the legacy console. We're now pulling in hardware and software information. So if I drill down into one of these machines, I can now see hardware utilization based around CPU, memory, disk usage, and actually get some detail around each of them. So I can see the CPU utilization, I can see some details around the CPU itself. Software detail, I can see all installed programs and updates, and I can also see installations and an uninstallation. So if users have the ability to uninstall or install applications, I'm going to be able to see that right here. Trash can obviously associated with an uninstallation, and the floppy disk is associated with the installation. Now with this detail, what you're also able to do, you're able to create filters. So filters are next to the organizational tab. So I can click on filters, and we can see the pre-built ones right here. So I can see ones based around operating system, system type, hardware, software, and you can create as many filters as in-depth as you want. So let's say I had a piece of proprietary software that was present on multiple computers spread across multiple groups. I'm probably not going to group my computers based upon applications. I'm going to group them based upon, if they're a server, where they're located, potentially if I have multiple sites. So we want to create a new software filter to see all those machines together. So I come in, I can click on Add Filter. We'll give it a name, mystuff.exe filter, just for right now, and we'll select a category. So we want to base it around software, software name, and then we want to say it's equal to, and we'll say it's equal to mystuff.exe. I can now add this filter in place. I could adjust this filter. I can add new conditions. Maybe I want to base it around software, and I want to base it around hardware because it has a RAM size or a disk size that is larger than a certain aspect, so I know that it's a server. Or I could base it off of, hey, this software is only present on servers, so let's filter that down to make sure that it's only present on the servers. So you can do and or statements. It really allows you to get a lot of granular detail and filter it however you feel like. Now this detail is present due to the new communication that occurs between the agent and the backend. It is now real time. So before, there's a 15 to 20-minute window where the communication occurred. With this real-time communication, any changes that you make on the management console are sent down in real time. Any patches, any updates, so any new definitions that are handed down are now in real time. So effectively increasing the security of those endpoints as they are now able to get any new definitions as soon as they are defined from our cloud. It makes it very simple to come in and get that granular detail. And then on top of that, for Adaptive Defense customers and Adaptive Defense 360 customers, you now also have the ability to isolate machines. So with this, if you're concerned about any sort of compromise within your environment, if you think potentially it's either an internal or external compromise, you can isolate that machine, severing all network connections, both internally and externally. You can sever individual machines, or you can sever groups of machines. So if I wanted to, I want to sever the connection on this Windows Desktop 11, I can come in here, isolate the computer, and now I know that that machine is completely locked down. It still has the full protection because only the connection between our backend and that endpoint is allowed to occur. Everything else is prevented. So you know you still have the full protection. You can then go locally to that machine to remediate on it. If you want to isolate groups of machines, you just choose what group you want to isolate. And as you can see, there are computers that are isolated within here. So I could say, you know what, stop isolating the ones that are isolated. I want everything to be running as normal. or I want to isolate all of the computers within here. So it's really up to you how you see fit. Now, this has an end goal with our remote management module, which will be coming at the end of the year, start of the new year, being able to remote into the machines if you're running into any issues within there. Deployment itself is very simple as well. There's no more deployment tab. It's all just underneath the computers tab. So I click on add computers, and you have a couple different options. If you want to deploy out via URL or via an MSI, as you can see right here, you can still do that. If you have your own software deployment tool, no worries, you can deploy out via the software deployment tool that you utilize internally. If you want to use our own deployment tool, very straightforward. As long as you have a computer that is on the network that is designated as a discovery computer, you can then find all of the unmanaged computers within there and then push out the Panda agent to there. So we'll click on Discover Remote Installation. I know that we already have a discovery computer or two set up within here. Don't have to worry about setting one up to be a discovery computer, so we can just go view the unmanaged computers. So I come into here. We'll give this a second to populate. As you can see, wide variety of them. Looks like there's around 50. So I'll click on this, and now I can just push the Panda agent out that simply. For discovery computers, there are no extra resources required. It just uses the built-in network driver that is present within all the agents to find those unmanaged computers. So you don't have to worry about extra resource utilization, extra network traffic whatsoever. Very simple to set up. And with the new version of Aether that just released, any new customers that potentially install and want to deploy out via that initial computer that they install will be set up as a discovery computer. Any new network a computer goes onto, that first computer will then be set up as a discovery computer, making it much simpler to find all the unmanaged computers and then deploy the Panda agent out. Now, one other aspect on the computers tab that may not be known to a lot of current existing customers. If you have any issues, yes, you can reach out to our support. They'll be there via phone, via email to help you with any sort of issues. If you don't have the time to back and forth communication and you want to get it solved right away, you have the ability to report an issue directly on that computer and send the log dump automatically up to support so they can then go ahead and work with you to figure out what's going on. Instead of having to do back and forth over email, having them send the log management tool to you, you running it, zipping all that up, and then sending it back to them. All you have to do, just choose the machine that's having an issue, click on the 3 dots, choose report a problem, give a description, your email. It'll automatically create the log dump based around this predefined information, hardware, installed software, operating system, files from Panda, whether there are any other solutions on there, be it antivirus, firewalls, and then list of services and drivers. And they will then reach out to you as it automatically creates a ticket for them once they're able to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. So this makes it much easier to both manage your environment and deal with any issues from a support-based perspective and reaching out to support. Now, settings. With the legacy console, it was very difficult to manage individual settings for individual groups. You had to go hop back and forth between the settings, between the computers, moving things around. It was just a hassle. We've drastically improved that for end users. So if I want to see what settings are applied to each individual group, I don't need to have to click through and see every single individual part. I can just come in, click on the 3 dots, see the settings, and I have a list. So I can see the per computer settings, the network settings, the security settings for workstations, servers, and then Android devices, and then patch management. And for patch management, that's more just setting up the frequency when it looks for patches to deploy out onto the environment. So if I want to come in and say, you know what, I don't want to inherit settings from all, I want to inherit settings from my per device settings profile that I made, I can just choose that right within here. Makes it vastly easier to set this up. You don't need to go into the settings profile, assign the recipients, and handle it that way. You can just do it right from the computer hierarchy tree. Now, on the topic of settings itself, much easier to manage. You also are getting some new additional functionality from a management perspective, as I like to put it. You now have the ability to define specific roles, permissions, and you have a full auditing trail of all activity and sessions. So, say you have a couple admins, or maybe you might have an intern that should pretty much only have access to, say, reports. They're not allowed to make any changes within the environment. I want to set that up as a role for them. So I come in, we'll use the test role as an example, and I can see what groups they have permissions on, and then what permissions that they have. So potentially, if you know that intern that I want to only have access to reports, I'm going to come down, I'm going to turn all the computer options off. I'm going to turn off most of the security options, except for view detections and threats. view accesses of web pages and spam, and also potentially, if you have the advanced visualization tool being a reporting tool, I want them to have access to that as well. But maybe I want to turn off the file access information. I don't want them seeing sensitive data as an intern. So you have the ability to really customize these any way you see fit if you have multiple admins that are going to be accessing the system that maybe shouldn't have total control or shouldn't only have read-only access. They should have a varying degree of access within the account. Now, as I mentioned, you do have full auditing as well. So I can see all actions taken. So as I started the demo, there was a new minor version release that I had to accept. You probably didn't see that. I believe I started screen sharing after I logged in. And then I can see that patch installation task that I had created. So even though I didn't even deploy it out, just the fact that I created it, I see that action. You can export any of this information, sessions as well, so I can see when I log in, when I log out. So this is great from both a security perspective, being able to keep track of what your admins are doing, any changes that they make, but it's also extremely important from a compliance perspective. HIPAA, SOC 2, PCI, whatever compliances that you guys care about or that have to adhere to, you're going to be able to say, I have the full audit trail of what my security solution, any changes that are being made within the security solution, and that's been a big ask for the new platform. So that's what you have present within there from a user-based perspective. When it comes to per computer settings, really the only new detail for the per computer settings within the anti-tampering. So with the anti-tampering, you can block access for users or obviously malicious actors, both malicious software and malicious actors themselves, from disabling the services or uninstalling the protection itself. You can also manage it locally. So potentially, if you are local to a machine and you want to log in on that agent and turn off some of the protection or disable some of the protection, maybe you're running into an issue, you can now do that. It makes it very easy to do that. So that's pretty much the only difference from a per computer settings perspective. You will notice on the new platform, everything is mostly button-based, so it makes it very easy to come in, turn on, turn off what you want. We've removed all the tab-based views that made it kind of difficult to figure out where things were. So the per computer settings was buried underneath the Windows and Linux settings, and you have to go to the advanced settings for that. So that makes it very simple to see, all right, we split it up from users to per computer to network to alerts, and then specifically to security settings. So network settings, this is where you can set up your proxy, your cache, your discovery. So for anyone that has potentially any bandwidth constraints, especially for anyone that potentially goes towards patch management, you're able to set up a cache, store all the updates, all the patches from there. All the other computers on the network will then talk to that machine to receive those patches and updates. If that connection potentially goes down, maybe the server went down, maybe there was a communication error between the endpoints and that cache, they can still talk over the internet. So this is obviously great for anyone that has any sort of bandwidth constraints. Discovery computer, very simple. You just choose the computer that you want to set to discovery. You can choose how often it looks for new computers. You can have it auto-checked. You can have it checked instantly for you. It's really up to you how you want to handle that from a deployment-based perspective. When it comes to alerts, there are some differences for a couple of the alerts. With intrusion detections, with phishing alerts, with blocked devices, you could potentially get a massive amount of alerts, especially on the intrusion attempts perspective, depending upon how your network is configured and just how locked down the environment is. So, of course, you don't want to get 1,000 emails a day because of intrusion attempts that are hitting your environment. So now we send summary emails, as you can see with the little information eye, that are sent every 15 minutes that give a summary of all the detected threats, be it if it's the malware URLs, the phishing detections, or intrusion attempts. So it makes it very simple to not have to worry about sort of an email overflow and a data overflow that you just can't handle. When it comes to security specifically, so we've now removed, as I mentioned, all tabs. That makes it much easier to find the information and change the information that you care about. So if you're an adaptive defense customer under the advanced protection, very easy to choose the behavioral mode, the anti-exploit. There's no more separate tabs. A lot of people didn't realize that anti-exploit was something that they could enable or disable within the legacy console because it was a separate tab. Antivirus, there's no more separate tabs for the web and email AV. They're just now all underneath each one. Firewall settings pretty much stay the same. They're just easier to adjust and manage. Device control, same as well, just easier to manage. Web access control, the same as well, just much easier to manage within here. The only other difference from a settings-based perspective is the patch management, as patch management being a new piece of functionality. So under the patch management settings, this is where you can choose the frequency of when it searches for patches and what types of patches that it searches for. Pretty straightforward. You can set this up so if you want specific groups to search for patches more often, if you have your workstations, you want to make sure they're always updating their applications, because as we know, the average end user doesn't like rebooting their machine, doesn't like applying updates, and they're always the first ones that are going to be the source of infection or source of compromise within a system. So making sure that their machines are always looking for the patches, that they're always taking the patches if patch management is something that makes sense for your environment. So in conclusion, that covers the changes and features to the new Aether platform and what you're going to get through the migration process. The migration itself, very simple, it's very smooth. We want to keep it as easy as possible. What happens is there are only pretty much 2 checks that are required to make sure that your environment is ready for migration. As long as the protection is newer than 7.65, and if you have the anti-tampering protection enabled, you will have to disable it during the update, and then you can re-enable it within the new console. Everything is ported over correctly, so you're still going to have all your hierarchy, you're still going to have your settings in place, and then you can come in and adjust that as you see fit. All that's going to happen, you don't need to uninstall the solution. It's going to send out a command to the agents on the endpoints within your environment to upgrade to the new Aether agent, and that's one of the new benefits. If you have any NAC devices within your deployment, those licenses are now just Aether. So it doesn't matter what the device is, if it's an Android device, if it's a Mac device, if it's Linux, if it's a Windows desktop, as long as it's on Aether, it has the exact same license. So you no longer have to worry about having separate licenses for Mac and then the separate licenses for Windows. It's now just one single license. Once that migration command is sent down, depending upon the size of the environment, it'll take roughly 5 to 10 minutes for the migration to occur. And what you will see is when you log into the portal, you have the button for endpoint protection. You might have the button for systems management. If you have systems management, you'll now have a new button that says potentially endpoint protection or endpoint protection plus or adaptive defense or adaptive defense 360 on the Aether platform. The old button will disappear once we shift all existing customers onto the new platform. This migration process has been on demand, so as we slowly move up and increase the size from which we will migrate customers, it's been pretty random when it comes to that. It was also available to customers that wanted patch management, that wanted to trial patch management as well. And now, as of 2 weeks ago, we will do upgrades to the new Aether platform on demand. So if you like what you saw today, you want to migrate your existing customers, the end clients onto the new platform, we will be reaching out to you and doing that migration process. Very simple. It makes it as seamless and as easy for you. It's not a project that will take days of work out of your day-to-day workflow. Outside of that, I believe that covers all of the changes, the migration process itself. So took about 25, 30 minutes. I want to open the floor to questions. I know we scheduled a whole hour, but I want to take a couple minutes to answer any questions that you may have. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I will answer them as soon as they come in. Alrighty, looks like we already have some questions real quick. Let me just open this up a little bit and we can answer those questions. Give me 1 second. It seems my GoToMeeting is being a little bit funky with displaying the questions, so I can't see all of the questions. There we go. Okay, so from Doug Bush, he was asking, my clients are all using PCSM for patch management. How does Aether affect this? So currently today on PCSM, you only have the Windows patching available to you from there. This is the first step in consolidating the security solution and the systems management solution into one. And the patch management is the first module that will be moved over. So this is a separate module. If it's something where you want the third-party patching and you want it all within the Aether platform, you can then move to that. With PCSM, there is quite a variety of different modules within there, from patching to monitoring devices to mobile device management to script deployment to application deployment. So depending upon what they're utilizing PCSM for, if they're only utilizing PCSM for patch management, it may make sense for them to then shift to the Aether patch management and away from PCSM. So it just depends on how they're utilizing systems management within their environment. If they're utilizing most of the modules, but they still want the third-party patching, they'll be able to do that on Aether. And Neville, yes, this recording is, or I should say this webinar is being recorded, so yes, we will be able to send the recording out. Any other questions, anyone? I'll give it a couple minutes, obviously, for typing out questions. A question from Miguel: if I already have 8360 now, when will the new Aether be switched over? So if you do not want to request the migration, it will happen over the next couple of months, just depending upon the size of your environment, how many licenses you have. If you have a very large environment, it'll be a little bit further down the road from that 2 to 3 month period. But if you want to migrate to the new platform today, all it's simple is I send the request to headquarters, and then they migrate it over the period of time, just depending upon when it's sent in and then how large the environment is. So it's a very simple process. It just depends on what you would like to do, if you want to do a migration as soon as possible, or if you just want to wait for the automatic migration to occur within the environment. All right. It doesn't look like anyone has any further questions. I will be sending this recording out. This will be available as a recorded demo for everyone. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out via email. I will be able to answer any sort of technical questions that you may have based off of this Aether demo. I want to thank everyone for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you in the future for any potential future webinars. Thank you very much and have a great day.